As a government, we are committed to making all Australian workplaces safe and free from sexual harassment.
It has taken 13 months for the Morrison Government to respond to the Respect at Work report, which it received from Sex Discrimination Commissioner Kate Jenkins in March last year.
I've actually just seen the full tome, and if she adds all that detail, we could be here for some time, just saying.
Today, Scott Morrison and his new Attorney-General Michaelia Cash celebrated the significance of last year's report, which aims to prevent and address sexual harassment in the workplace, a problem the report found has affected 39% of women and 26% of men, and imposed a $3.8 billion annual cost on the economy.
Sexual harassment is unacceptable. It's not only immoral and despicable and even criminal, but particularly in the context of the Respect at Work report, it denies Australians, especially women, not just their personal security, but their economic security by not being safe at work.
But things happen at their own pace with this government. Not only did it take the government more than a year to respond to the report, it didn't actually release its full response today until around 2 hours after Morrison and Cash emerged, just after 9 a.m, to talk about their plans for dealing with Jenkins' recommendations. That meant reporters, as is now a standard practice for this government, had no information on which to base questions, except that revealed by the two ministers at the press conference. You might remember a similar scene playing out when the Prime Minister released the report of the Royal Commission into Aged Care.
You've had this report since Friday. You've given us half an hour's notice to attend a press conference. You tabled the report while we were here. How can we ask questions that are relevant to what's in the report without knowing what's in it?
The government's approach made it pretty difficult to get a comprehensive take on what the Royal Commission had to say about aged care. And it was a problem today too, when trying to assess how the government was dealing with 55 recommendations from a report which spanned almost 1,000 pages, especially given the PM's strong rhetoric.
Now, Kate Jenkins' report, Respect at Work, is a game changer. It is changing the very narrative that will drive the appropriate actions needed right across governments and across our society. We believe our response, a roadmap for respect, will do the same thing.
So the first message about the government's response sounded pretty impressive.
All 55 recommendations are either agreed, wholly in part or in principle, or noted where they are directed to governments or organisations other than the Australian government, or the government is able to achieve the intent of the recommendations through other means as set out in the report.
The crucial words here, of course, are recommendations agreed wholly, in part, in principle, or noted. And in fact, much of the initial focus of the press conference, given the shocking stories emanating from Parliament House itself in recent months, was on the announcement that members of Parliament and judges would in future be subject to the Sex Discrimination Act, which was not actually a recommendation of the Jenkins report.
We will be subject to the same law as anybody else, which means you will be subject to the same consequences.
When the government's actual 25-page written response to the inquiry was released around 11:30, the picture was a little more complicated. The government has agreed to 40 recommendations, agreed in principle to 5, agreed in part to 1, and noted 9. But it's not so much in the numbers of recommendations adopted as the significance of the ones it has not agreed to. Crucially, it hasn't adopted Jenkins' recommendations for amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act, which would put the onus on employers to take reasonable and proportionate measures to eliminate harassment.
There's never a guarantee that your recommendations will be accepted. That the 55 recommendations have been actually accepted, and the majority of them in total, I think is a good outcome for the future for Australian workers. It has taken some time to get a response to this report. I know that. I'm pleased with the response we've got.
But in cautious language, she clearly indicates the need to press the government further on that crucial issue of expressly requiring employers to eliminate sexual misconduct.
The one that I am very interested in pursuing is the positive duty on employers under the Sex Discrimination Act. I think it would be a real missed opportunity with such comprehensive reform for the government to not at least consider some kind of positive duty be put into the Act.
And while the government was somewhat unclear today about how exactly it would enact a system which brought judges and particularly MPs into the Act, Jenkins thinks it is possible to achieve this.
I feel like we're at a turning point where that is changing in the corporate world, and I think it's well time for members of parliament and judges to be subject to the same standards as everyone else.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.